Bundle, 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 bundle. My rap style's boom bap, articulate, never mumble. Disney, Hulu, and Max just announced a bundle on the services websites to where customers will be funneled. Apple TV and Paramount Plus is a bundle. Everyone wants to be the one with the buzz like a bee that bumbles. ESPN, TNT, and Fox are now a bundle. A sports JV that Fubo TV hopes will take a tumble. Disney, Hulu, and ESPN is a bundle. I'm over the top, never below like a trundle. Max launched in France with Canal Plus, it's a bundle. You can catch me in a Parisian bistro or drink a German dunkel. Verizon has Netflix and Max, it's a bundle. This rhyme pattern is getting long like the hair of Rapunzel. But isn't Netflix by itself inherently a bundle? A collection of things wrapped up together that you don't want to fumble. The streaming wars is crazy. Welcome to the jungle. I'm a product of the 80s like Guns N' Roses and Mr. Bungle. Blinded by the light at the end of the tunnel. Zora is through subscriptions or Professor G is to the rundle. So ladies and gentlemen, let's get ready to...
Hello and welcome to this May Bite-Size. I'm Ben, your host, and we're on a hot day today. It's very, very roasting here. It's 32 degrees in my office here, which is sweltering for UK weather. But we've got a great show in store. I'm going to be joined by Kai, who's the VP of Product, and we're going to be talking a little bit around what happens once we've got a bundle strategy in place. What happens next? What is that IT system going to happen? What's going to happen in that IT flow? And it's we're going to be digging a lot deeper into the kind of technical side of things. So I'm really excited to join Kai on stage with me. Welcome, Kai. How are you getting on?
Hi, Ben. Yeah, it's never good to complain about the sunny weather when it's finally here, but it's certainly a little warm. But it's great, and I'm looking forward to talking about one of the topics that's close to my heart.
So yeah, we were in the office about a month ago, weren't we, Kai? And we were talking about what we could bring to the Bite-Size series. Do you want to tell us a little bit how we ended up with this particular topic?
Yeah, so as you say, it was a couple of months ago, and we were in the office and in our new sort of Bango offices, and we were sort of. You asked me the question, I suppose, which was what gets me sort of deep thinking about things around subscription bundling as a product person, and your motive obviously was what are the topics for the next Bite-Size. But one of the things that really got me, and in true sort of my style, I picked up the whiteboard pen and was sort of sketching out pieces that sort of illustrated, why digital vending machine and why Bango, and the challenges that subscription bundling can have. If you take certain approaches. So we sort of came out of it with a number of questions, and we're going to have a look at them today, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So let's get stuck into this then. So when we say what we're kind of covering here, I want to kind of talk through some of these areas in a bit more detail. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but what we're talking about here is what actually happens when a company, a telco, thinks they're going to go ahead with a bundled offer. What happens next in that? What happens in the kind of the IT flow, aren't we? Do you want to talk a little bit and elaborate a little bit more on this, Kai?
Yeah. So I guess the question really comes is subscription bundling is that kind of approach that a lot of resellers are looking at, and content providers are looking at channels to distribute their content rather than being the direct consumer. And so subscription bundling can kind of really drive through an approach that can be more successful. We will talk about it shortly as to sort of some of those success stories. But it's really important to understand when we talk about subscription bundling, we're not talking about just any old offer that's offering a third-party product. What we're talking about is a third-party product that adds to your bill with the end consumer, and that is how we see the benefits that we get. And we'll come on to that shortly. But yeah, those 6 questions that came up, and we're going to cover them today.
Excellent. Yeah, I wanted to start off with talking a little bit around why telcos are bundling in the first place. I've kind of split this into three different areas. We've got some data that obviously the people that know Bango, we produce a lot of reports and data in the market, and some of these data points I think really feed into this particular narrative. Loyalty is one of those things where I think is a real big part of subscription bundling. It really strengthens loyalty. When we look at kind of this is from a survey of 5,000 US subscribers. What would if they had a subscription bundle on offer, would they become more loyal to the telco that's providing that? And 62%, as a resounding number, said they would do. That just shows the power of kind of subscriptions when they're bundled into a proposition. And more than half of us are saying they're getting better value from bundle subscriptions more than standalone as well. So this is kind of really showing and feeding into that kind of loyalty play that's there. In addition, churn comes up all the time when we're speaking to our potential partners and current existing partners. These two stats that you may have seen before, Kai, I think are really fascinating. So 60 to 70%. This is a churn reduction kind of numbers from Verizon. They stated when they launched their kind of multi-party bundle with HBO Max and Netflix. These are fascinating and really strong, compelling numbers. And over in Europe is an example from Telenet. So they've got a kind of subscription marketplace, and they're seeing a reduction of 26% from their customers that have taken a bundle within their marketplace. So really showing some proof points on why bundling is having that impact on churn. And finally, when we look at kind of connectivity in a telco is their kind of core service, how subscription bundling can add value and kind of give a reason to stay with that service. Subscriptions are really well loved, as you can see from the stats above. So when we look at like an example with like Sky with their Ultimate TV bundle, they have 4 services packaged up into that contract, and that straight away gives a lot more of a compelling reason to stay with that particular service, and kind of then adds value to that core connectivity service as well. But big question is, Kai, is subscription bundling working, right?
Yeah, and I think that the numbers you showed on the previous page, right? Subscription bundling, as I sort of defined it and talk about it, yeah, it absolutely is. And actually, those that are already on their way and already bundling, maybe that's 3, 4, or maybe more launches. What they're showing is that not just an acquisition benefit, but also that retention benefit and the increased revenue per user benefit. So when I, as I mentioned before, when I talk about subscription bundling, I'm not talking about just any distribution of a third-party product. What I'm talking about is actually getting to the point where that third-party product, the payment for it and the subscription for it lands on your customer's bill. And that's where you get that benefit. Now, I really like the Sky UK example that you gave, because you've got 4 services that are part of their inclusive bundle. So that would be considered a hard inclusive bundle. But their approach to it means that they're all standard ads tiers, but any upgrade, that's all going on that Sky bill. So you're getting that increased benefit of the top line to the revenue, and you're also seeing the benefit on those upgrade paths. So I think the report that you've showed and the future bundling report that we built is absolutely brilliant. But it just shows subscription bundling is working. People are on their first, their second, their third, or even more, but and they're learning what converts, what works, what means retention. But just because they're first movers doesn't mean it's game over, right? I think what we're seeing is that as you get learning what's going on and as you launch more, you get the ability to tweak and tailor to what differentiates you, right? It once you've got more, it isn't just I have a first party product plus an SVOD. It's actually that you have flexibility, and therefore you get your differentiation and your personalization for your consumer base.
Yeah, and I think if you think for me personally as a consumer, right, in the UK market, so I'm starting to see this kind of like it becoming the norm, right? Of you getting Netflix as part of your mobile plan or your internet when you join as an acquisition tactic. And what in the UK market in particular, I think we're losing that kind of differentiation, right? It's starting to get a little bit stagnant and starting to get kind of, it's expected you're going to get that subscription. So I think as things start to get more complex, and this is what you're probably going to go into a little bit more, this is where it really starts to get, a lot more kind of, I suppose, more complexity put onto the IT systems that already exist to be able to deliver more flexibility and choice for customers, right?
Yeah, exactly. Those single hard bundles are, table stakes really. And what we're trying to get towards is how does subscription bundling become an enabler for your differentiation?
So a question arises really here is, why have more telcos done this, right, globally? If it is successful, why is this not happening?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we see, and this is sort of many conversations with many operators, and the fact that the subscription bundling evidence is there, right? You only have to look back to the case studies that we've provided, and with digital vending machine, you get those numbers that you want, not just the acquisition, but the retention numbers and the ARPU numbers that you want. And so what you get this, you can build a business case for that for subscription bundling. The proposition, the marketing, everything's aligned, everything can be signed off and agreed with the content providers. But the way that many operators then act is it goes into IT and becomes a project, right? We're still talking about large organizations that have sort of a business and IT split up. And so all of those IT projects are queued. And that the IT queue is the challenge then, because that that implementation, that project is sitting aside everything else that engineering team needs to achieve that quarter or that year, right? And so your BSS, your OSS, so they're built on an assumption that you own the products inside them. But subscription bundling and with the distribution that we're talking about, that's breaking that model. It's now the content provider's price. It's the content provider's APIs. It's the content provider's subscription lifecycle. And more importantly, it's their pace. You need to move at their pace when you subscription bundling. And that's because content providers have to move at that pace. The subscription economy, right? It is moving very, very fast. We see acquisitions all over the place. We see price changes changing all over the place. And so what the danger is that the business strategy gets stuck in this kind of IT prioritization debate, and that's the bottleneck.
Yeah, I think this is really kind of the key point that we're talking about here, aren't we? And I think to kind of really illustrate this, could you just explain around kind of like a typical kind of IT queue flow for setting up something like this?
Yeah, so I guess the challenge we see is when you take that piece and you look at that engineering or that IT capacity that you've got, you'll then, once you get your place in that queue and we get that go through, it might take the best part of a year to build and launch with all the core applications that need changing, which means touching things that also touch your first party products, right? Which are therefore the very, very robust, very, very strict testing cycles to get it to launch. But once you've got there, you then looking and gathering data on whether it succeeded, and to prove it's working, you need more evidence. And you've also then got to rebuild the case to get in the queue for the next one. And so what you can tend to find is that you launch one, and then you might be waiting a year. Might be not unforeseeable, right? You could be talking a number of years before you're able to launch that second one, which means a time away from that strategy, becoming a thing, because you've not got to 2, 3, 4 like we've just talked about. And so the result is that these IT systems that are designed and perfectly built for first-party products, they become a structural limit for your system for subscription bundling. So one project is a hard constraint on how fast you can compete.
And if anyone's got any questions throughout this, we'll have time at the end and we can address them, maybe sharing some of your problems or challenges that you have currently right now with your systems. Feel free to ask myself and Kai a question, but we'll address that towards the tail end. So Kai, if we, you touched on a little bit there about first party systems and kind of what's actually breaking down within them. Do you want to just elaborate a little bit more on that one for us?
Yeah, of course. So as I mentioned, it's like that they were designed for first-party products, for telcos and for operators to put out their first-party products, and they are doing exactly what they're designed for. And what we can see is that a challenge of, if you do a feature-by-feature comparison of a BSS or a whole back-end system versus the things that you think are needed for subscription bundling, it looks like you've got all the features in the first-party system, but the mismatch is not quite there. The mismatch is where you have to work at the speed of the content provider. You have to be able to do these things on products that aren't yours. And so that means, the catalog, the first party catalog assumes you own that definition. But now all of a sudden with bundling, you certainly don't own that product definition in the same way. These are often digital subscription products. They change frequently, add tiers, change names, do all sorts of things with a frequency you're just not used to. And then we've got the plan lifecycle, so often called the subscription lifecycle, how you're paying with the timing, the free phases, the paid phases, the discount periods, all those kind of things. And as you start to bundle more and more things, and you start to get the benefits, like in search of the benefits that we talked about, you start stretching the system that wasn't designed for exactly this purpose. So maintaining that billing lifecycle ownership will start to feel like an operational liability and an overhead. And we come back to those projects and how to get that in the queue. That becomes a harder and harder piece to get into that queue and to the top to do more.
I think one particular use case as well that we come up against quite a lot, right, and a lot of people talk about, is price change. I think there's been a lot of analysis of how Netflix changed their prices, every, could be 3-6 months, and that cadence can change, across multiple content providers. Do you want to just talk through one of those examples in a bit more detail for us, Kai?
Yeah, so this is a real story I had from an operator, and it's a common question I ask because I'm always looking to try and understand the biggest challenges and the biggest pain points that operators understand and content providers experience, so that we can develop the product and have the product in market that really solves their challenges. And so an operator was given 3 days to do a price change.
3 days.
3 days, and that can be lenient. We've seen less, and what that means is changing new customer pricing, which is usually relatively easy, but also updating every existing customer that you've got. And if you've got a really successful bundle that's got millions of users, that's a big impact. Now, IT said it'll be 12 weeks to do this. Now, often what we find is that it takes more than 3 days for an IT organization of the size we're talking about to be able to even estimate the effort of this sort of thing. And so they took the approach that, well, we need to do this. We have to do this. Maybe it's part of the contracts that we have, or whatever it might be. And so they took it on that they'll do it, but they'll manage the risk of it by the customer service team manually applying extra charge on every consumer's bill every month until the rollout happened. So you can imagine the error rate, the potential error rate, the potential customer service calls you get, and then the potential churn just by doing that. So the bottom line is that price change has just dented the bundle business case in one foul move.
So the example on screen here, you did like a 3-week to 8-week example. Obviously, you shared kind of an example which is even more tight, even tighter timeline, yeah. Right? But yeah, no, I think it's really fascinating to see that this is something that's happening quite frequently now. And as telcos kind of expand outside of SVOD as well and get into health and fitness, or they get into kind of gaming and the different, we may see again this kind of flexibility that's needed is going to keep increasing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the different categories, but it's a really good point, right? The different subscription models that people are starting to see. The reason we call it the plan lifecycle rather than subscription lifecycle is there's an ever-shifting business model when it comes to these third-party subscriptions, right? So you look at AI tools, and they're talking about token usage and usage limits rather than subscription payments. So we call it plan lifecycle because it generically covers everything. And that key point at the bottom line is the market and this market of the subscription economy, it doesn't wait for your ITQ.
So we talk about in the product end-to-end quite a lot. Kai, I know you've been using this for a while, right? Could you just explain what we actually mean by end-to-end in terms of the context of subscription bundling?
Yeah, sure. And it was great that we had that time in the whiteboard in the office, because it actually made me realize that it can come across sometimes as a bit marketing speak, end to end, and it's just a throwaway term. But this is really, really crucial to subscription bundling and the way we operate. Is that when we think about end to end, we're thinking about everything that a reseller and a content provider need to do to launch a subscription bundle and operate a subscription, essentially channel-based subscription management. Mm-hmm. And that splits into two really distinct parts, which is the provisioning layer, which is what we all know about, creating the entitlement, the right to access, making sure that, the content provider is told this person has access to this service because they're paying me. That's the provisioning layer. But the other part of it, and the piece that most commonly gets brought into a BSS or an OSS or the internal systems, is the billing layer. So vouchers solve sort of less for telcos that want the ongoing relationship and the ongoing retention numbers that we talked about. They solve an acquisition problem. The content provider is sort of satisfied because they're with the entitlement management bit, because that's the bit where you communicate to the content provider.
Mm-hmm.
But the billing layer is the bit that then sits still on the operator to manage. Their catalog needs putting into that first party system. That is where the changes in the ITQ come. So it's the billing lifecycle that becomes really important, and the combination of billing lifecycle and provisioning is the crucial piece. So solving half the problem, solving just the provisioning, leaves half the problem for the reseller to have to manage themselves and find a way to build that logic in. So end-to-end means a product catalog that is designed for change and designed for the ownership model that we talked about. It means price changes are handled because the billing lifecycle is handled end-to-end through someone else, and it means lifecycle control. So DVM, and the way we talk about digital vending machine, it is the end-to-end that puts subscription bundling where it should be, which is outside of the first-party products and outside of the ITQ as much as possible, so that you can take benefit of all of the different things that we've talked about so far, and you and Giles have talked about in previous sessions.
Yeah, and just that ability to launch faster, be able to just try new things, experiment, all that kind of stuff becomes a lot easier if they're not relying on having to wait in a queue for all the other priorities are in there, right? That's
totally
kind of what we're getting at. And then if you think about the kind of project kind of economics on this as well, because I think that's a key part of this, right? When it goes into a lengthy ITQ. Do you want to explain a little bit more on how this kind of works as well, please, Kai?
Yeah, so it's this idea that if you're thinking in terms of IT projects, your modeling starts to break, and what you start to focus on more is, have we launched, rather than am I getting those business objectives that I'm looking for, right? So the point is when you start to break that model and you start to think end to end throughout it, actually your offers start to get a fair shot for the ROI model that you've got it, right? So there's no more months of customizations per bundle, of changes to catalog, of price changes, of life cycles that are handled. They're all outside. That's where a lot of the time, the effort goes, and that's where that hard constraint that I talked about at the start sort of appears. Your first bundle and your first offer, as well as your seconds and third, actually get a better shot of succeeding, because you can turn things around much quicker. You can make changes without the same IT, oh no, we finished the cycle, we've got to wait for another one before we make changes. You're able to inspect and adapt. And what that sort of start meaning is that you move to more of the channel distribution that you're providing for a content provider becomes the place where actually content providers want to experiment, to see what works in the channel, but also you can be leading and facilitating all that kind of thing. So you can fix an underperforming bundle because you can adjust it. You can respond to the price change. You can get all of those edge cases all covered because it's all handled end to end. And what that means is that because you can do that, then your bundles 2, 3, 4, and all those offers become quicker because the business case proves itself much earlier, and it becomes a much more successful thing to get those retention numbers that we're talking about. So it's not about deciding to bundle or not to bundle, but it's about how many you can do and how quickly you can find to hit those numbers, that we talked about Verizon and Telenet achieving. So we really want to sort of shift that thinking to how do we focus on the opportunity that subscription bundling sort of presents itself. And I think one of the things that's become interesting, and we're starting to see it more and more, is actually because reselling channels is such an attractive distribution place, what you're seeing is that there are offers in market that you cannot get direct or you cannot get from other places. That's the differentiation we talked about. And that can actually be part of your acquisition strategy for first-party products. So the subscription bundle can become a really attractive prospect to acquire new first-party products. So it opens the channel as a bundling strategy to experiment. You worry less about your ITQ and the prioritization arguments that you've got to do. And you're in control because you can actually work at the content provider pace, as opposed to feeling like you're fighting against it, which is commonly a challenge that people see when they don't act end to end. Well,
thank you, Kai, for walking through that. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions that come from this. A lot of people join either, on demand like this, join live while we're watching live streaming, or might watch this on catch up. So if there's any questions, please do just reach out to us. There is a QR code while you're watching this if you wanted to send a question to us via that, and we'd be more than happy to pick up those questions. So, Kai, let's go to the Q&A.
If it wasn't obvious, Ben, I love to talk about this sort of stuff. So please do get in touch directly, and I'm more than happy to have a conversation outside, like you just described.
Yeah, perfect. A few questions here coming through, and feel free to put them into the chat in LinkedIn as well for those that are watching live as well. So, how does DVM sit alongside our existing BSS investment? Does it replace it? Does it reduce its dependency a little bit? Do they coexist? Can you just explain how that works, that dynamic?
Yeah, of course. So again, it's that point that subscription bundling is bringing third-party products to your proposition to make your proposition better, and also to help the content providers achieve distribution. And so they sit alongside it. But as opposed to using having a first-party product, in terms of your homegrown systems, your internal systems, managing that, you are then putting it where it should be. So you're reducing the dependency. It doesn't replace it, right? There's still the first-party products, the complicated CPQs, and all those kind of things. They all sit where they should sit. But subscription bundling with DVM sits where it should sit as well, which is alongside it, and it works in coherence with it to make sure that your subscription bundles are a success.
I suppose a follow-on question from that as well, the benefits of the data that's kind of captured then as well, and the analytics from that kind of offer and how it works. Can you talk a little bit around the benefits of this, this move, you say, moving some of that decision-making out of the BSS into, say, the DVM? What are the benefits from a data perspective?
Yeah, so from a pure data numbers, the data is very similar, right? I think you're still in a position where everything that's being captured, whether it sits in the first party system or in digital vending machine, are going to sit in similar places. But there's two really key aspects to this, one of which is that often you'll find the relationship with the content provider is stronger because they can both access digital vending machine to understand how that's progressing. And one of the real benefits that people see let's talk specifics and capabilities, the Bango, the digital vending machine dashboard that we have is real time. So while it might take 24 hours or longer to work through an IT team and talk to the data team to get information about how successful your bundle launch was, with digital vending machine, we have marketing teams and product teams and strategy teams looking at our dashboard to see, is it working? We've just gone into launch. What's the acquisition like? We've just migrated to digital vending machine. Where are the X million of entitlements that we've gone through? All of that is live and real time, and that access to that data, we talked about giving that offer the chance to succeed by iterating and changing it. Any bottleneck on accessing the data to make decisions is going to impact that success. So with digital vending machine, that real-time nature and access to it is a real benefit.
Thank you for that. Question around how does DVM handle a content provider that's changing their APIs mid-contract? That's a big challenge, isn't it?
It is. I suppose this is when we talk about the provisioning and the billing layer, the provisioning piece. This is very firmly in that provisioning layer, right? Is the way that digital vending machine is built is that it sits as an abstraction layer with the API, which means that from a reseller perspective, you onboard to digital vending machine, you onboard to support the use cases that are needed for subscription bundling, but you don't know which content provider you yet want to launch. So therefore, you onboard the same way to every single one of them. If you want to support all the use cases, there are all the use cases that you need to support, and that will future-proof you for all content providers that you can come across. And so if a content provider decides to change, actually it's the content provider and Bango that sort out their onboarding to digital vending machine, because the abstraction layer means that the reseller, it doesn't actually change those things at all, because they just continue to send the same provisioning that they always have done. I think one of the biggest things that we've seen is probably going quite a little bit technical, but we talk about product keys. quite often. And in order to be able to understand how things change through their life cycle, content providers can often use different product keys to represent different things. Now, with the end-to-end that Digital Vending Machine provides, the plan lifecycle understands what needs to be sent to the content provider at what point. So if they change those keys, it will understand that when Ben moves from his free trial that was 6 months into a paid phase, that's a different product key, and that automatically happens, because for some content providers it won't change, some content providers it will. So that knowledge, that abstraction becomes really important in order to support whether it's API changes or changes like I just described with product keys.
Awesome. I'm looking at the time. I think we're slightly overrunning from the half an hour slot, Kai. So I think we'll draw it to a close. And I'll say once again, thank you very much for your time and effort into this one. I'm sure there'll be some questions that will come up from this when people watch this on demand. And yeah, I would like you to join the June session, which will be taking place towards the tail end of June. Thank you very much, Kai. Enjoy and don't get too hot. Okay, thanks a lot.
Have a great day.
Bye-bye.